Welcome to this episode of Becoming an Elite Financial Advisor. I'm Sten Morgan. I'm a financial advisor just like you. Today, we are going to unpack some leadership skills. And mainly the question is, are good leaders always positive? And this is something in my story I struggle with because I tried to be that leader all the time until I realized that I can bring a level of realness with my team and better communication skills that helped my team members feel more safe to share, to lean in and offer solutions to problems more proactively, and it created a better culture. So this episode, we're going to dive through that together. And at the end, we're also going to share a resource with you that you can go to gobeelite.com and download our resource that are questions you should ask your team. And we'll break those up into maybe weekly questions that can just be ongoing, but then also maybe some quarterly ones when you have a bigger meeting with your team that will, in a positive way, be a direct conversation to root out what are the things we should be focused on the most so that we can reach our goals. Let's jump in. Welcome to the podcast. I'm Sten. This is Andy. We just got back from the Indy 500.
Zoom.
And it was good because you've seen that how many times now?
Oh, probably 20.
Nice.
It's a good time. It's I don't know how I ever watched that race without large video screens because there's nowhere in
like
the
LED screens everywhere?
Yeah, like there's nowhere on the whole track you can see the whole race. So it's like zoom, and then you wait 30 seconds. And then zoom. So that's
what I thought about. I think about horse races sometimes. Obviously, those are smaller, but if I can have some view of everything going on.
Yeah, it's great to go in person, but it's way better to watch generally at home because they have 97 cameras where you just have one. But it was very cool. They had some Black Hawk helicopters were floating 50 feet from my face, and it was mind blowing. And it's just it's a great event. I took my daughter for the first time. Good to Sabbath is important. Rest is good. Mm. So I know that you and I honor that at our company and appreciate your example. So, but things are not always good.
It's true.
Which is kind of what we're going to talk about today.
That's right. And the Renaissance Festival I just went to, the first one of my life, was we'll do a whole episode on that. That was wild.
I don't think anyone's surprised that was your first one.
So when you go somewhere and you're not dressed up and people are the ones looking at you like you're weird. And I'm like, I didn't know I was supposed to dress up. But yeah, so the idea of, and this is something I struggle with as a leader is it a gift to my team to be positive all the time, to go off somewhere, be frustrated with things, handle curveballs, but then when I step through the doors, I'm always positive. And that is the illusion I lived under for a long time until through many years of leading a team and being around a lot of other advisors, the healthiest teams, the most successful advisors, the ones I like to talk to, hang around, were much more real with the struggle, and they love to celebrate, but it's not always one-dimensional with them.
Yeah. We'll break this down, but the big picture here is that it is not a gift to your team to always say everything's wonderful and everything works out all the time, and that there's a level of toxicity to that, which I thought was interesting.
I do think there is a level of resilience that you need to have as a leader, because I do think you do set the stage and the tone for things.
Yeah.
I think it's, probably if the ship is going down and the captain is the one freaking out, people take his lead.
Yeah.
Whereas if, the captain, he or she is stable and confident, I think in all military aspects, people would say that is a good thing to do.
Right. So
don't hear us as saying abandon that mantle or responsibility as a leader. But I have learned over time that it is also okay to keep it real. And man, this is frustrating today. Or, to be honest, guys, I'm hung up on this thing and I need to process it out loud. Like the ability to communicate in a clear, honest way and not have to pretend, because I think that's what eventually people are feeling, even if they can't call it out. They feel like this is just not as genuine side of this person as I want to see you experience.
It can actually end up coming across as actually delusional if you're too optimistic all the time. I remember a meeting. I just had this memory of this meeting. It was probably 25 years ago. And it's crazy that I remember this. I was working at a summer camp, and the leadership of this organization came in from outside. We'd all been working to camp for a few weeks, and things were not going well. We were renting the camp because our normal camps were full, and the staff that was at that camp wasn't very good. Kids weren't having a very good time. It was just a train wreck. And they came in and they're like, we just think things are going super. And we're like, what are you talking about? It hurt it hurt morale even more to not just have the difficult conversations. So the problem is that overly optimistic people can dodge helpful, tough conversations, and they think that they're doing a service. So how do you balance not, panicking, and then just being real and saying, hey, things are not going well in this area right now?
Yeah, I think in the past I would live in I need to muster a bunch of positivity because my positivity will help me get out of people what I want to get from them.
Interesting.
Or, man, things aren't going well. I'm going to be frustrated, but try to hide it, but they're still going to feel that I'm disappointed or frustrated. And so in my attempts to channel what I thought would get me the best results, it created, lack of connection with my team, Sten's not being real. I thought I was, masking it better than I could. They were still feeling my energy the whole time, even if it wasn't on the surface. And so I do think there was a big sense there of like, the circumstances are not matching what you're doing.
Right.
And I didn't have enough people around me that had been in leadership to discern what was going on. I think there's certain levels of team members to where that's just going to turn them off.
Yeah.
And, you'll get less loyalty, maybe less output from their role. They'll be less honest with their frustrations. So those frustrations will build over time. And then maybe they leave someday and you're surprised. So I do think there's a couple things we need to hold here. And as you guys listen to this as advisors, leaders, business owners, what is your level of awareness on how you come across? Are you a panicker? Do people are like, oh, I wonder how Jim's feeling today? Is he going to come in and just blow up on us? Like, nobody wants to be that type of leader that leads from fear. But are you overly optimistic? If we were to audit and ask your team, Susie's always just pretty happy, everything's always good. Then I think you're kind of missing some kind of passion and realness of like, hey guys, you're capable of more. Like we're capable of more. Like it's like a healthy frustration, like a healthy version of anger when it's like, I think we're underachieving now. I think we can be doing better than we are. And so I'm more frustrated and angry at the situation, not necessarily the team. And I think sometimes that's passion. And people want to feel like, whoa, like Sten's fired up today and he's bringing it. So as a leader, we need to be resilient. We're the rock in the stream that things are flowing around. It's not tossing us about. But we do need to bring like a realness at times. Typically that is first experience is curiosity. Like, hey, why are we doing it that way? Hey, why do you guys think that we're not hitting our numbers? And we haven't added a new ideal client for 2 months. Like, to be honest, like that's worrying me a little bit and I don't know what to do with that. Hey, can we get in a room and talk that out? Like what part of our, I think there's a way of being real in what's going on, the lack of results or the lack of cohesion. There's been times I've had a meeting where I'm like, guys, I just feel like there's a disconnect in the room right now.
Yeah.
Like I feel like we're all on autopilot and we're just not really being real with each other. Like, what do you guys think? That's not, hey, we're all great and just pretend it's not happening. But I'm also not coming in there accusing everybody that it's their fault. There's a disconnect, but I'm willing to call it out.
There's a few good things I think that those listening can take and can implement right away. One is to lead with curiosity. When you have a situation like that and you're going to go into a difficult conversation, start with asking questions instead of throwing out accusations. So just what do you think? How are you all feeling? What do you see? Mm-hmm. Those are safe places to start, and they might be equally frustrated and go, I'm totally on the same page. I just don't know what to do. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I haven't said anything. I don't have anything to add. I'm frustrated. I go home at night. I don't like it. I'm worried you're going to bring it up because I just don't have a solution, but I care. Then you might have others who go, oh man, no, things are good. Things are really good. And you're like, no, they're not. That's right. Like we're on a boat and there's water on your feet and like, there's not supposed to be water on the boat. Like it's supposed to be on the outside and we're sinking, but you think things are good, but you don't know that until you ask. So I love that you start with curiosity. And also I think there's a level of respect of like, I'm not just going to come in and tell you guys all what to do. I'm going to respectfully ask what your position is, what's your perspective, what do you see? Because you as a leader might be missing some things. Yeah, they might say, Susie, we do think things are bad, and it's because you come to the office like one day a week.
Yeah.
And you're like, dang, okay, truth. So I love the idea of starting with that and starting with really, really just not rhetorical, not loaded questions. I think starting with curiosity is a really safe place to start.
Yeah. I think there's also this like illusion of progress in a way. I look back at legacy, and I think there was like a good 2-year stretch to where on the surface it's like, hey, we're working, stuff's happening, and then I kind of stop and evaluate, and I'm like, not much has changed. Like, we're all busy.
Why did it seem like there was progress?
Because everybody was busy, and I think at times people, depending on the type of team members you have, I didn't necessarily have the greatest hiring skills and onboarding skills at that time. So, people maybe didn't have the most clarity, but I think people started like adding tools just to create work for themselves. So you'd end up with like 6 different tools doing the same thing because people didn't know what else to do. So obviously some lack of leadership in that, obviously not having the right people on the bus. But if you're not willing to just kind of call stuff out, and this is where, that book, Not Nice, it's like, you don't need to be nice, but you can be kind as a leader. And sometimes being kind as a leader is like, hey, I just want to level set with you. Here's the goals we said we were trying to achieve, and we're so far off. Where do you think this went wrong?
Yeah.
And so I think overly optimistic leaders will avoid pivotal conversations.
I think they just avoid measuring things a lot of times. Because,
that's true.
Because you run off of feelings, and we all like each other, and isn't this a nice place to work, and it's a nice office, and it's a nice view, and we get lunch on Monday, and it's like you can just. And that's where I remember this was 25 years ago. I was doing a consulting gig with a company, and there was a secretary that was really, really unhappy. And she told me about an incident. And I was like, when was this? And she was like, 8 years ago. I was like, you've been thinking about that for 8 years? And she had not had a conversation with her boss about it. And then I asked the boss, I was like, when's the last time all of you were together outside of like a Christmas party? And he's like, probably about 10 years. There were 12 people in the whole company.
Wow.
They just never got together and got on the same page and level set. They were just like you said, Sten. They were just busy, and they were nice people, and they generally liked each other, but they didn't pursue difficult conversations.
Yeah, I do think that ignorance is bliss to some degree. Yeah. And so for a lot of advisors I meet, they have enough money in the bank, and so therefore, let's just keep doing what we're doing. Once I started implementing dashboards where I got real-time data, and I was able to say like, hey, for some reason our B-level clients, we're adding more of those than our A+. That seems backwards. Why have we not added AUM for the last 2? Like, most advisors and really most companies have data risk, meaning you are not making decisions based on data. It is more based off feelings. Or a lot of advisors are making decisions based on the fear of a team member. Like, I'm worried if I make them upset, I'm going to lose them. So
tell me an example of that.
We had an advisor once we were coaching. I don't know if you remember this call, but it was like, she works remote most of the time. This was a staff person, and she's only 60% time because she's busy, and she's asking for more money.
Had something to do with her kids, I thought. And it was like, hey, that's valid that she's busy with her kids, but it was, I'll let you finish that part. Go ahead.
But the idea was that he was trying to kind of makeshift a system to accommodate this person, where the nicest thing for both of them was like, hey, here's what it needs to look like to be in this role now. It was this way at first, but now it's grown to where I need somebody 100% on time. And if that's the pay you want, here's the extra responsibility you have to have. I'm giving you the choice to take it or not.
Right.
But I'm not going to. And what's funny is he knew the answer. And sometimes we just walk people to the answer and give them some courage to lean into it. And I can't think of a time where someone's like, oh, I wish I hadn't done that. but it is, and as we talk, I hope you guys are all checking internally as you listen, like, where would I fall on the spectrum of like drill sergeant, unemotional, to I don't like to have hard conversations. I think I'm just going to keep it the way it is until it crumbles, or I have some urgent fire to put out. And at the end of the day, like a great leader can find a balance of being kind yet firm, leaning into hard conversations to a point of like realness where people actually feel connected and they're more loyal to you.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a tightrope in a way. There's times where I was like, I kind of overcompensated that way. Oh, I fell to this side too much. But the leaders I am around that I'm like, wow, I really respect them. It's like, man, they seem to have hard conversations and that people like them afterwards.
Yeah.
Like, what is that like?
That last part, what is that like? I think a lot of people would ask themselves, what is that like? And I would ask you who are listening, when's the last time, because you would remember it, because it's a hard conversation. When's the last time you had a hard conversation with a staff member? And I know that I hang out with and talk with a lot of umpires, and one of the things that a lot of them pride themselves on is, hey, I've never thrown anyone out of a game. And to me, I'm like, so you just take abuse is what you're telling me, because there's no way that people have not done things that deserve
There's always
a
a couple
consequence.
people at each game, man.
And so my point is, with this line of thinking today, is not having conflict is not impressive to me. I used to think that was the case. It was, but now I think that just means that you're not having hard. I'm not saying like have a brawl every Thursday with your team, but if it's important, if what you're doing is really important and you really value your team and you want to get better, you have to create resistance, meaning you have to create conflict that's manageable, which is let's talk about what's not working. Unless things are working all the time, and I don't know any business where that's the truth, right?
And I think there's some element of that of ownership as the leader. Like it is all on you. Like if somebody's messing up, you're the one that hired them. You're the one that trained them. Like somehow roads will lead back to you. And so when I'm trying to have those meetings, it is usually, I have to share with you, like I'm frustrated right now. I'm frustrated that the system I built for some reason isn't working. And I feel like it's frustrating everybody else. But my fear is that I don't have the time to fix it on my own. And for some reason, nobody's taking the lead on it. So my hope is in this 30-minute meeting today, we can figure out like what's the sticking point here? How much of it do I need to solve? And then is there somebody that can step in and help us solve this problem?
Yeah.
I do think there's what we call it at Legacy is gaps. Like if a team member finds a gap, like I don't want things to be problems. I don't want to have this like gray cloud over us all the time. And I think for a period, and part of this was just kind of what was going on in my personal life, but I brought that to work and people were probably like, Sten is generally just disappointed. Like we're just not hitting all the big goals we're setting. Like he has to step in and fix stuff. Maybe he doesn't trust us. Maybe we're not empowered to do it. And there was a period, a couple of years ago where I was like, man, I want to have a general positive outlook on things. Like I don't want things to throw me off so much. But what I can't do is just let team members run everything. Like I still have to hold my ground, but I think I can have a general positive outlook on stuff and handle problems well. And so at Legacy, we call them gaps. Man, if you find a gap, let's solve it. You get to decide as a leader, like how do we frame stuff? And you can always reframe things from, are you just disappointed and frustrated because there's just problems and things are going wrong? Or is that just part of being in business?
Yeah.
And you actually get to say, man, I love this. Like, man, I have such a cool, fun job. Like we have problems to solve every day. Like that's exciting. And so I do think there's some element of kind of mindset. If you do find yourself avoiding that, I know in my story, it was something deeper. I was like, okay, I'm worried that if I'm real with people, they're going to see me as less professional. That if I do share, like, man, I'm frustrated. Like, I honestly, like, disappointed in myself and I'm scared somebody's going to leave. Like, all this real stuff that you don't necessarily dump on all your team. But if you can't bring some level of vulnerability as a leader and sit in something with somebody, especially if they're like, man, I'm frustrated. Well, tell me why you're frustrated. Like, what's the point? And they're like, well, maybe it's because I don't know if I'm being led well. Well, tell me what you need from a leader. Like, there's this line of questioning that keeps you out of it and doesn't trigger you as like, well, defensiveness.
Yeah.
That you can create an environment and a culture to where it's like, we get after it here. The bar is high. Man, Sten can be intense, but man, he pushes us. Like, because I work here, I'm doing things I never thought I could do. And that's the thing that I've seen in other people where I'm like, that's the kind of leader I want to be. No longer the one that's trying to make everybody happy at the same time, because there's just no way you're always going to get that right.
That's a massive recipe for disaster. You use a few words several times, which I think that, if you can pull these words out and deploy them in your company today. One is vulnerability, which is just, I'm going to be honest with a fear I'm having or a concern I have. Another is authenticity, which is, I'm not going to BS this. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Like, you and I have had conversations, and I'm sure you've had them with other people, but I haven't been there because they're private conversations. But it's like, I'm mad about this. I'm frustrated by this. And by this, it's like with you. It's like, Andy, I'm frustrated with this part of what you're doing right now. And mature people can handle that. Yeah. And let's just talk about maybe the elephant in the room, which is like, maybe you're afraid of having the conversation because the person that you work with is not mature enough to handle that. But maturity is saying, I'm willing to have the difficult conversation because it's worth it. Because you cannot be, back to what you were saying in the beginning, you cannot be held back and restrained by and ruled by your staff's emotions.
Yeah.
Like that is just not, that is a recipe for disaster.
They're allowed to have them.
Yeah.
And maybe they unprofessionally bring too much of them at times. And you can coach them through that. That's a coachable moment. But yeah, if at any point you feel you're changing course or it's ramping you up based on someone else's feelings, that will probably impact your decisions. You got to rein that in.
So, one of the things we talked about is it's not about being cheerful all the time. It's about being honest, authentic, and having a willingness to confront challenges. I love that. Confront challenges. They're not, and I like the word you called gaps. They're just gaps. And we're here together to fill the gaps, but you don't fill the gaps and solve the problems unless you talk about them. And it's not personal. It's just, let's talk about them.
And that can be even practical. I think great conversations you can open by saying, I'm not really sure how to say this, but I want to share with you kind of what I'm hung up on.
That's
or
cool.
You can even ask permission. We need to have a really direct conversation. I don't think we've had one of these before. There's probably things both of us are feeling that we don't know how to get out. So I want to create a space right now to where we both get to just ask questions of each other first. And then we can kind of say, hey, here's what I'm struggling with. If as a leader, you don't try to control the whole situation, but you are the one that brings the framework and you keep it on course. I do think that's something I've tried to get better at. At times with a team member, maybe if you get in a rhythm where we meet every quarter. And every quarter we put your SWOT up on the board. What's your strength, weakness, opportunities, threats? Hey, what's your personal goals? I think you can create an environment where they are prepared to share because you've done it before.
Yeah.
If you do it once every 10 years, like that other group, there's a lot going on.
Not a lot of practice. Yeah,
So
and there's a lot to unload. Well, back in 84.
That's right. I actually wrote it down. Here you go.
Right.
So I think for you as a leader, it's like, do you have a framework that you can start training your team? Because the first few times you do it, they're probably not going to bring what you want them to bring because it's new. And they're like, well, is there going to be repercussions to this? You just might have to ask really good questions. Always having data helps in those meetings because you're not going off your gut.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I can lead with data to be like, hey guys, there's something going on here. Like everybody seems really busy during the day, but for some reason the numbers aren't moving. We got to solve that together. Versus, Susie, what the heck? You're not doing your job. Or even giving her that sense. It's like, okay, now we have a common mission, and it's to figure out why we all feel like we're doing such great work and we're so busy, yet we're not getting the results we want.
Yeah, and in our company at EAN, we've also talked about, are we measuring the right things? Are we solving the right problems? And so part of it could be, we were measuring this. Well, that was the wrong thing to measure. We should have been measuring this over here that leads to that. And again, these are just questions that I just think that most people that are listening to this, you have one, maybe two, maybe 3, 4 people you work with. It's just so fascinating how many conversations you can avoid having on a day-to-day basis that really are the difference between you making just massive progress and massive strides. I mean, I had a conversation with a gentleman last week, and he basically said, hey, I want to run this company someday, but my partner is not really big on paid financial planning. And I was like, okay. And he's like, so I think that I'm just going to kind of lay low. And I'm like, you're like in your early 30s. Like, when are they going to give you the company? He's like, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 years. I'm like, so your plan is to lay low for 2 decades.
That's patient, dude.
And then talk about planning? I was like, it sounds to me like you're just afraid to have hard conversations.
Yeah, good call out.
Thank you. It felt really good.
Versus, I'm imagining if I'm that someday, that older guy is probably just waiting for somebody to step up. There's a version of him where maybe he doesn't want to be challenged, but part of him does want to be challenged. That if somebody came in well thought out, well prepared, and said, "Hey, I want to put something out there that's probably going to shake you up a little bit.
Yeah,
are you open to that?" I guess so. All right, let's do it. It's like we're on the same team, but so much of it comes down to setting expectations well. Like if you come in guns a-blazing on conversation, I remember you asked me that once back in the day because I can sometimes be like, "Hey, let's talk about this," and you said, "Hey, before we have serious talks, I need to know what it's about."
Yeah,
don't catch me off guard. And I think both parties are allowed to do that. So if you set good expectations, you make it about a common struggle versus the other person. But you could go through that process in a really healthy way. And as a leader, you still have to discern and step back and say, is this the right person? Are they? Should they be on the team? Everything we're talking about is not going to avoid the hard things you need to do as a leader. But you will find out sooner if people should stay on the team if you're having these conversations.
Yes.
You will attract and keep healthier people if you're being healthy. And so audit yourself as we wrap up in 5 to 10 minutes, quiet space. And if you're really bold, ask people for some feedback. How do you experience me? Do I tend to be overly optimistic where you feel like you're just not being real? Or do you feel out of my fear of people not doing what they're supposed to, or maybe not respecting my company and fighting as much as I do, I use fear and I'm kind of unpredictable in my leadership or emotion to try to drive results. We need to stay away from those extremes, but there is a place in the middle where you can find it to where you are respected because you're steady, but you're also respected because you're transparent in a professional way.
I love it. I love it. Thanks for giving that framework. And I hope we've also been able to give you all some really practical just words to use, phrases to use. So if you have to, just stop and listen to this episode again and then take some really practical steps. We're working on a guide for this to help guide you in those conversations as well. So when we have that, we'll send that as well, because this is really a leadership issue.
Yeah.
That's really where this falls under.
Yeah, I do think as leaders, there's a responsibility. This is one of our core teachings in EAN for this reason, that so much of your potential is tied to other people. It's your ability to attract the right people to be on your team, to motivate them, to lead them towards a common goal. And so if you feel like, man, I just want to be an advisor, like all the other stuff is annoying, I want to avoid it.
Yeah.
You could do that, but you just need to go get a job somewhere else. Like don't run a firm, don't run a team. But if you want to run a team or you're in leadership at a firm, my hope is you take this really seriously and say, okay, how am I developing myself as a leader as quickly as possible? Because you will get 10x results from finding the right people and motivating and staying connected to them, as opposed to you saying, I'm just going to try to do it all on my own.
Absolutely. Thanks, Stan.
Thanks, bud.